the colour was always a big thing for me with Censor, and it was something it's one of the things that came out of Nasty, that I worked with the same DOP, Annika Summerson, on Nasty and Censor, and so for me it was always kind of this journey for the central character from like bleak suburbia, like 80s Thatcher's Britain, into this like really kind of colourful, bright world of the video nasties. So in Nasty, I was like, how do we do this? And how do we do this so that it's a slow shift and it's not like this sudden 180? And it was really fun being able to do that on a longer project with Censor. And so colour-wise, I kind of broke down the film into, well, not just colour, but generally I broke down the film into worlds. So you've got real world, you've got memory, dreams, and the video nasty world, and you start kind of in a mix of the real world and the video nasty world, because you have Enid at work in the real world watching the video nasties. And so the colour inspiration for the real world was very much like inspired by photographers from the era who were taking pictures of like real life. I wasn't interested in a kind of big shoulder pads, 80s sort of perms and big earrings version. I wanted like bleak Thatcherite, you know, oppression. And so I was looking at, like, in particular, there's a really good photography project by Paul Graham called Beyond Caring, and it's lots of people in like the Dole office waiting to go for their, you know, turn, and they're all wearing like grey and blue coats, and it's just miserable. And so they were the images that I was showing my costume designer, my production designer, my DP, and looking at for the real world. And the idea was that we kind of, I suppose, slowly weave colour through the film. So Enid's watching these lurid, violently colourful films, but then we go into her dreams, which are very Argento inspired. So we start to see kind of pinks and purples for the first time. And then when we come back to the censor's office, to the real world, we start to have pinks and purples in the background that start to break up these kind of cyans and blues and things. I get really excited about colour, so I had specific meetings with my HODs just focusing on colour.
So here's some sort of Annika work.
That's Annika, my DOP, but there was also, it was me, Annika, my production designer, Paulina Jajazowska, and my costume designer, Saffron Kalain. We would sort of come together. I really wanted everyone to be talking about their plans and for everyone to be kind of syncing, because it's all good you talking to each HOD, but obviously the DOP and the production designer need to be working together, and the production designer and the costume designer. So, you know, we talked a lot about the idea of Enid really belonging to the censor's office at the front of the film. So she's, almost all the characters are pretty much dressed in the colours of the office. So they kind of meld into the background. They're part of the furniture. And then as Enid starts to kind of break away from that world, we would introduce like a deep red t-shirt or something. And it's just those sort of subtle things that kind of guide you and can create a structure, but also create that kind of palette that you're looking for. That's really fun stuff.
How much do you sort of like really knuckle down to the sort of the micro aspects of like pre-planning? Do you storyboard? Do you shortlist? Do you what's your kind of method for like how you communicate what you've got in your head to sort of get it out to those key kind of collaborators?
One of the first things I did on Censor, because I was always like, how do other directors do it? You know, like, and particularly when you're about to make your first feature, like you shortlist a short and you're like, oh my God, I'm shortlisting how many scenes? How do I get through all this? And so the first thing I did was like almost like a script breakdown, but in a kind of PowerPoint. And it was partly inspired by the Godfather notebook, the Francis Ford Coppola's book on the Godfather. And he broke down every scene based on like 5 things, which I was like, I'm going to do that. But it shifted away from, he had like, I can't remember all of them, maybe someone here does, but it was like theme, and pitfalls was a good one. That was one I definitely kept, was pitfalls, like what could go wrong? What could I not communicate to the audience? Or what do I if I don't get this across in the scene, how is that going to mess the story up?
Was that tone as well? Like, was he trying to create to define the energy that was required? Yeah,
exactly. So tone was one of them, and like iconic images or something like that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to put together like a big document where I'll have all my references for every department, and that means that, you know, I could put a sound reference in and a cinematography reference, and then depending on how thoroughly that HOD is able to look at it, because obviously time is limited in prep, you know, they're able to kind of understand maybe what the sound might be doing, and that might inspire their department. And so that was a really helpful way of me gathering all my ideas, and then from there I went on to shot list. So I tend to shot list really like tightly, and on my shot list I include images either that I've drawn or images that are reference images.
Just little sketches, like storyboards? Or?
Yeah, it might be like a storyboard. Haven't tended to storyboard, mainly because I haven't had the budget to get a storyboard artist in on any of my films, but also just how long it would take me to storyboard. I'll maybe storyboard certain scenes, so if there's like a stunt or I have a very specific way that I feel like drawing it's going to really help me communicate that, then maybe I will, but I wouldn't do it for the whole film. It'd be amazing to be able to. But then obviously once I've then got the location set, then I'll kind of return to my shot list, maybe reorganize it around the location, and then do a floor plan. And floor plans for me are one of the most useful pieces of, you know, paper or like files, or however you want to look at it, because on a shot list a close-up is like, where's the, you know, we don't know. For an AD to be able to, you know, understand when to turn the crew round and all that kind of thing, for me a floor plan is the most helpful, and it means that I'm being asked fewer questions on set and people can kind of see what they're doing, but obviously that can change on the day. I think there's always room for things to shift, sometimes because they have to, and sometimes because you find a better way of doing it.
Find us at nodirectionhome.com.